What's up guys, it's Smitty, back with another NBA video. Today we're going to be taking a look at ESPN's top 25 NBA players under 25 years old list, and we're going to break it down. We're going to make our own list, and we're going to see exactly what went wrong with their list. Honestly, you know the list is bad when people who get paid by ESPN disagree with it.
LaMelo belong in the top 3 of this list?
Hell no.
Honestly, I'm not a fan of First Take by any means, but man, Stephen A was keeping it a buck during the last episode. But before we get into this video, it'd be awesome if you could check to see if you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. It's completely free, takes 1 second to do, and it really helps my channel grow. I post all sorts of basketball related content on here, and I'd love to see you guys hop along for the journey. Also, if you happen to enjoy this video, consider leaving a like, as it'll spread my video to even more people. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. As you guys just heard from Stephen A. Smith himself, ESPN made a horrible top 25 NBA players under 25 years old list. Honestly, I feel like ESPN just released this list in order to get views and, to get the hype. Honestly, putting LaMelo Ball as the 3rd top NBA player under 25 is just blasphemous. And that's not hating on LaMelo Ball at all. Even LaMelo Ball fans themselves gotta admit that right now he's not a top 3 player that's under 25 years old. The league is stacked with young talent right now. And even if they were talking about future value, even then I wouldn't say LaMelo Ball is top 3. Maybe top 10, but top 3 is just outright insane. But yeah, also, I have a huge problem with people talking about this future value aspect of it. I'm assuming that ESPN is making this list based off of future value, because right now, obviously, LaMelo Ball just isn't quite good enough to be the 3rd best player under 25 years old. He's only averaging 16, 6, and 6, not to mention he's injured at the moment. But the problem with ranking players based off of future value is, how can you predict a guy's future based off what they do at a certain age? This doesn't really make much sense. Basically, the moral of the story is, don't count your chickens before they hatch, because at the end of the day, we've seen it with so many players, whether it's due to injuries like Derrick Rose, or just players unable to get to the next level. There's a lot of hoops that players have to hop through in order to become elite. So just because a player is 19, 20, 21, 22 years old and is doing outrageous things better than LeBron did when he was young and etc., doesn't mean that they're going to pan out just like those players did. There's been also so many superstars that have flown under the radar, such as Steph Curry. People thought Monte Ellis was even better than Steph Curry, and then one year they just have a breakout season and all of a sudden they become superstars. So there's so many players that are under the radar right now that will probably end up being superstars one day, but no one will ever talk about them now until they have that breakout season. So this idea of future value really doesn't sit well with me. I don't think that this is a great way to measure players' abilities at all, because at the end of the day, there's so many variables that can happen throughout a player's career, and so many things that can derail them, and so many things that can just put them right into the spotlight, even though they haven't had any attention before that. So at the end of the day, I feel like the only way you can really rank players is how they're playing now. Sure, if a guy's 19 and he's playing as good as a guy who's playing 23 years old, sure, that makes a difference. But just because a player is younger than another player doesn't mean they're better. They have to back it up, and throughout their course of their career, they have to prove it. So basically, I'm going to go over my rankings now, and I'm also going to go over, if I was theoretically looking at value, what I would put them at, what players I would trade for which players. But first, let's break down ESPN's top 25 players list under 25 years old. At number 1, they have Luka, which isn't that insane at all. He's 22.0 years old, according to them. Zion at number 2, it's not the worst take. Zion's been balling. I wouldn't put him at 2 at this point in time, but I'm not too mad about it. He's age 20.7 according to them. Then at 3, they got LaMelo Ball, which is the big statement. He's only 19.6. Then they got Don, who's almost 25. Jason Tatum, who's 23. De'Aaron Fox, who's 23. Simmons, who's almost 25. D-Book, who's 24. Bamu's almost 24. Shea's almost 24. Ingram's almost 24. Jaylen Brown is 24. Jamal Murray's 24. MPJ is almost 23. Ja Morant is almost 22. Trae Young is almost 23. Mikal Bridges is almost 25. And then Sabonis, who is very close to being under 25. Anthony Edwards, who's still 19. DeAndre Ayton, who's 23. Halliburton, who just turned 21, actually. John Collins, who's 23 and a half. Jared Allen, who's almost 23. Lonzo Ball's almost 23. And Colin Sexton, who's almost 22. Two players that were left out of ESPN's list that I'm a little bit questionable about is, first of all, OG Anunoby for the Toronto Raptors. He's 23.7 years old. And honestly, I feel like if they're doing it based off of how the player's performing right now, I feel like OG Anunoby should definitely be on this list. Even if they were talking about future value, he might even be able to slip in at number 25. There are some players on this list that he is debatably better, even in terms of future value. And then RJ Barrett. Like, if they're talking about future value, RJ Barrett has to be on the list. Even if they're talking about right now, he might even be a top 20 player under 25. This man has been balling. It's honestly so disrespectful for RJ Barrett. He didn't make an all-rookie team last year. I don't know what it is with the Maple Mamba, but this guy just cannot get any credibility in the NBA, despite putting up really damn good numbers. He's picked it up. I believe last month he's averaging over 20 points per game. For his entire season so far, he's averaging 17, 6, and 3 on a playoff team. So I don't know what people are holding against RJ Barrett. He's actually very young. He's not even 21 years old yet. Yet people still hold stuff against him, which I have no clue why they do that. I feel like he's definitely the third best player from that draft class. And that was a pretty stacked draft class at the top. So, RJ Barrett being left out of their list, I feel like is quite disrespectful. Now let's go over my rankings. Basically how I did it is each color that I put, that's kind of like a tier. So within a color tier, you could swap those players around in any order within their tier. And honestly, I wouldn't be mad about it at all. Like, personally, I struggle ranking the players one after another, but with this tier system, it kind of makes it so that you can group players together and not have to pick them one after another. However, I do have them in an order. So if I'm nitpicking, I may put so-and-so over so-and-so, but to explain kind of the concept of it, if you were to look at the third tier in my rankings, the yellow tier, we have Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, and Trae Young. Let's say your team needed a great three-point specialist. You're probably going to pick Trae Young. Out of those three players, he is a little bit more valuable. If you're looking for a leader, Donovan Mitchell is definitely the guy in that tier. And if you're looking for a guy who can just get you a bucket at all three levels of scoring, it's definitely Devin Booker. So depending on your situation, you would pick one guy over another. So that's why I kind of put them all in a tier, because they're so close that in certain scenarios, one is more valuable than the other. However, if we were to look down, let's say you wanted to put Sabonis in the tier with Zion, Jaylen Brown, and Bam Adebayo, I don't think you can do that, because I think in the only time Sabonis is more valuable than the three players above him is in very, very obscure scenarios. So for that reason, I would have Sabonis in the tier below them. So that's kind of my reasoning for putting all these tiers, because it really is hard to rank guys one after another, when in reality, there's so many players in the NBA that are literally side by side in terms of ability. So yeah, if you guys wanted to swap around, even the guy who I have at the bottom of a tier, if you wanted to put him at the top of that tier, that's completely fine. For example, if you wanted to put Jamal Murray at the top of his tier with Sabonis, like, no problem with that, because in various scenarios, I feel like Jamal Murray is actually worth more than Sabonis. So with that being said, let's take a look at all my rankings. At the top, I have Luka, and I have him in color red. I feel like Luka has to be the number one on your list in terms of right now, how their player's ability is. He's averaging 29, 8, and 9, which is absurd, regardless of your age. So yeah, I feel like you have to have Luka at number one on your list in order for it to be valid. And number two, Jason Tatum. I have him in his own tier. He's not quite as good as Luka, but he's substantially better than the players below him, I think. He's averaging 25, 7, and 4, and he can play great defense. He can even guard sometimes. He's a great wing defender. And on top of that, he's averaging 7 rebounds per game and 4 assists. He can definitely be a leader on your team. And that's what I think separates him from the tiers below him. The next tier I have is the yellow tier. I got Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, and Trae Young. All of these guys are really hard to rank. They're all ball-dominant guards, but they all have a skill slightly different than the other. Trae Young's a knockdown shooter. Donovan Mitchell's a great leader and an explosive player, kind of like Russell Westbrook, but he also has a three-point shot. And then Devin Booker is just a three-stage scorer. He can dunk it on you. He can pull up from the mid-range with floaters and pull-up J's, and he can also knock down the three ball quite consistently, as we've seen this year. Once Chris Paul's been paired with him, he's been able to bring that efficiency up. Then the next tier I got Zion, Jaylen Brown, and Bam Adebayo. All of these guys are averaging quite similar numbers, except Bam doesn't quite have quite as much points per game, but I think his defense makes up for it. If you wanted a guy to block a shot, Bam is definitely worth it. If you want a guy who can score on all three levels, that's Jaylen Brown. And if you want a guy to just straight up dominate the paint and body people, you got Zion Williamson. That's why I have those three in the same tier, because depending on the scenario, one is more valuable than the other. Then the next tier, which is the green tier, I have Sabonis, Ben Simmons, De'Aaron Fox, Brandon Ingram, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Jamal Murray. These guys come from all different spectrums of the NBA. A guy like Ben Simmons has no three-ball game at all, but he can defend pretty much every position. And on top of that, he has great court vision, great IQ. He literally does everything except shoot the three. You can make the comparison that he's LeBron without the shot. I don't think that's the greatest comparison, but I feel like that's kind of the level of player he is. And then you have guys like De'Aaron Fox, who are just great athletes and are pretty good leaders despite his team's bad record on the Kings. You can't really hold that against him, though. And then there's guys like Brandon Ingram, who are just like completely odd players. I would compare Brandon Ingram to Kevin Durant. I know that's the typical comparison for Brandon Ingram, but he's just a unicorn. I believe he's 6'10", such long arms, and he can shoot, he can dribble, he can do pretty much everything on the offensive end. So in that tier, there's guys from all different levels and stages in the NBA, but at the end of the day, I feel like their value level is all quite the same. Then the next tier we have includes Ja, LaMelo Ball, John Collins, and Colin Sexton. This tier is a little bit weird because you have a guy like LaMelo Ball who isn't quite putting up the numbers, but his talent just says it all for himself. Once he's been starting this year, he's been averaging over 20 points per game. I hope he can come back by the end of the season, but that might not happen. Then you have a guy like Colin Sexton. I have him at the bottom of the tier, but he's averaging 24 points per game, which is absolutely insane. The reason why I personally have him at the bottom of that tier is because of his team's record. Like a guy like Ja is completely leading the Memphis Grizzlies, even though the record's not that stellar either. He's completely leading them, and he's shown in the past, like last season, he led them to a pretty good record. So yeah, that's why I have Ja at the top of the tier, because he's shown to be a leader. Then you have a guy like John Collins in the middle there who isn't super young. ESPN has him as 23 and a half years old, so he's getting up there in terms of age on this list, but he's still, without a doubt, a very valuable player. Then the next tier, we have Michael Porter Jr., DeAndre Ayton. I slipped in RJ Barrett there, who was previously not even on ESPN's list. Anthony Edwards, Lonzo Ball, OG Anunoby, Jared Allen, Tyrese Halliburton, and Mikal Bridges. MPJ I have at the top of the list. His skill is just off the wall. Even if we're just doing with now rankings, he definitely deserves where he is. You could definitely put him at the bottom of the tier, like I said before, but in my opinion, I think he should be at the top. Then RJ Barrett slipping in. He's averaging 17, 6, and 3, like I mentioned earlier. I have him over Anthony Edwards. That may be a little controversial, but why I have Barrett over Edwards is because of his efficiency. But honestly, if you swap them, no big deal at all. Another guy I have in there who previously wasn't in their list is OG Anunoby. He's averaging 15, 6, and 2. an absolutely stellar defense. OG is one of the best defenders on the list, and he kind of reminds me of Kawhi Leonard a little bit. He still has to develop on the offensive end of the ball, but honestly, his defense is so similar. He has such big hands. He's great at anticipating steals. He can block shots. Man, like, he really reminds me of a young Kawhi Leonard on the Spurs. Then we have guys like Tyrese Halliburton and Mikal Bridges rounding out our top 25. And then if we were going to talk about value rankings, even though I don't think this is a great way to measure players at all, this is what I would put. It's so hard to really measure what a player will do in the future. So honestly, like, my list, or any list for that matter, is completely invalid because who knows what's going to happen down in the future. But if I was to take my best guess, I'd put Luka and Zion in the top tier. And then I'd have Jason Tatum and Trae Young in the second tier. Booker and Don in the third tier. Then Fox, Ingram, Shea, LaMelo, and Ja in the fourth tier. Brown, Bam, Simmons, Sabonis, Murray in the fifth tier. Sexton, Edwards, MPJ, Barrett, and Collins in the sixth tier. And in the seventh tier, Tyrese Halliburton, DeAndre Ayton, Lonzo, Jared Allen, OG, and Mikal Bridges. And I've included the 27 players there because I believe that OG Anunoby and RJ Barrett deserve to be in the top 25. But I also acknowledge guys like Mikal Bridges and Jared Allen, who were in the top 25 previously and I believe should also be in the top 27. Let me know in the comments what you think about my list. Honestly, I wouldn't even talk about the value rankings list because, quite frankly, there's no way to measure all those players in terms of their value. But yeah, let me know what you think about my now rankings, because those are actually players that we can rank one against another because of their performance the last couple seasons. And quite honestly, I feel like ESPN's rankings are extremely disrespectful to all-stars like Domantas Sabonis. They have Sabonis at number 18, and I know he's almost 25 years old, but that really shouldn't be taken into account in the rankings, because honestly, I have Sabonis as like a top 10, 25 player under right now, if we're just talking about skill. So to put him at 18, that's just completely disrespectful. Even putting LaMelo Ball above Domantas Sabonis right now is just so disrespectful. Like, LaMelo Ball is averaging 16, 6, and 6, which is the best among all rookies, but Sabonis is a straight-up all-star. He's averaging 20, 11, and 6. I know he got snubbed this year, but he was an all-star last season, and he hasn't gone down in production. So at the end of the day, I think ESPN is just trying to clickbait everyone. Ooh, LaMelo Ball's top 3, top 25 NBA player under 25 list. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't mean anything. Even my list doesn't mean anything. Nobody's list means anything, because at the end of the day, the players are going to play how they play. And most of them don't even pay attention to any of this stuff. But yeah, guys, if you happen to enjoy this video, consider leaving a like, as it'll recommend my video to even more people. And if you haven't already, make sure to smash the subscribe button and join the squad. I post weekly NBA videos on this channel, so if you guys like the NBA, you guys like basketball, make sure to subscribe. And I'd love to see you guys stay up to date on all of my videos. Anyways, this is Smitty, signing off.